Hey there, Pearlside small group leaders and coaches. Welcome to our Small Group Leaders podcast as we discuss our leadership guide for March 2025.
Pastor Billy. March already.
It's March, Coach. Pastor Billy here with Pastor Coach Alfredo Canencia. Yes. And yes, it is March, everyone. Welcome. And as we get ready to dive into this discussion, we're talking about transitioning from clustering to branching. And, this discussion will be for all of our leadership groups as we continue to encourage one another in our growth as leaders. Amen. Before I dive into this, just a quick announcement. One thing that I'm just so thankful for our team that runs our growth track at all of our sites and our services. And one of the things we want to encourage our small group leaders and coaches to consider is coming to serve at our growth track. Because one of the amazing things we're seeing happen at the growth track is new people come in and they're through the course of the 4 weeks, they're open to joining small groups. And so we've been able to start new small groups coming out of growth track, get people connected from awesome. The growth track into small groups. And we've found that people that go through the growth track are more likely to stick and grow and participate and even become leaders in the growth track. And so I want to encourage you, if you're kind of stuck in your small group, right. Sometimes that happens. Consider coming to be a part of the growth track team.
Yes.
And maybe help us to shepherd people out of the growth track into your group. And we've just seen new life come to groups. Again, new groups start and just great things happen. So we'd love to have you be a part of the team and whatnot. So you can email smallgroups@pearlside.org if you're interested or you have more questions, and we'd love to have you part of the team. Amen. Well, we're talking about going from transitioning from clustering to branching this month. And in our coaches podcast that we did just for coaches, we talked about defining the win of the coach. And the win for coaches, those of you that are coaches, is to help develop new leaders, new groups, and new coaches.
That's so true, yeah.
And so out of all of our small groups, that should also be the goal, right? If you're a small group leader, to help develop new leaders and new groups out of that.
Right.
And so coaches are going to help you with that, but we need to be thinking about that. And that's why this discussion is so important, because we don't want to just have nice group meetings like we talked about last month. Yes, we do want to have good group meetings, but the goal is that we would multiply new leaders and new groups.
That's
because ultimately we're called to reach more people and shepherd more people. People are getting saved at all of our sites and services. It's amazing. And we need to get them plugged in to communities where they can grow in discipleship. And so a few thoughts about this transitioning from clustering to branching. First of all, how do we get to this place of multiplying new groups and new leaders? First of all, number one, this is a best practice that we've discovered and we want to remind us of, is to rotate the small group leadership. And why this is important is very often, and I've been guilty of this over the years, as a leader, I think I got to do everything myself.
Yeah.
And so I carry all the weight, I do all of the work, thinking that I'm helping people. And it may come from a noble motive, but what we're also doing when we do all the work is we rob other people of the opportunity to grow.
True. Yes.
Right? And so by rotating leadership, particularly among the tripod, right? You give each member of the tripod an opportunity to lead week after week, is you're giving them an opportunity to grow. And we're also able to see leadership emerge out of people. And one of the things that I started doing this in one of the groups that I oversaw, is started rotating the leadership. And then when I finally asked one of the guys to lead an extension, he said, well, what do I do? Bro, you've been doing it for the last 6 months. Like, you've been doing it once a month and you're doing a phenomenal job at it. So you got it already. Yeah. And so it helps develop confidence. Oh, I've been doing it. It's not as hard as I thought, right? And also it helps you to see who has potential to lead. So we started rotating in another one of the groups. I said, man, that guy's good. We should empower him more, And so now he's actually stepping up to be a leader. And so rotating leadership is a great tactic and strategy. And then afterwards you can give feedback, which we ought to do to help them to improve. Coach, you want to say anything about rotating
I think that's
leadership?
really important, the feedback. When you rotate and you let other people lead, you have to give them feedback. That's how they get better.
Right.
But they build confidence in them, because everybody, if they've been in a group for a while consistently, they see how it's done.
Yeah.
But they have to be given a chance. And this is how, in a way, we can develop other leaders in preparing for maybe branching. But we're talking about clustering, but preparing in the clustering by giving other people a chance.
So it comes in steps, right? We don't just go from start one group to branching. You start. So we work it backwards, right? So the branch first starts off as a cluster.
Yes.
But to even get to the cluster phase, you got to rotate leadership, right? So
Yes.
step one is rotate the leadership, start having new leaders emerge, give them feedback so they get better, and then as the group grows, then you start to cluster, right? And
Right.
and you know, we all know should know by now the definition of a cluster, where one group meets in several different clusters in the same location. It maintains the relationships, but it enables new leaders a regular
Right.
chance to lead. And so as we rotate leadership, we start to develop new leaders, and then we form clusters. And usually clusters can start off at random, you know,
Yeah.
like whoever's sitting in that area, okay, you
Right,
three,
right,
okay, you three,
yeah.
you three. But I think what's really key is you start forming set clusters.
That's right.
As the chemistry develops, okay, you three are always going to be together, or you four, right? And Chad's the leader, and you
Yes.
four. Because what that does is, again, it helps we're just baby stepping one step at a time, the leadership,
Right.
and then you can start building a core there. And then out of that cluster, you form a tripod.
Right.
You start to find who are the other
Yes.
leaders in the cluster, even begin to rotate the leadership so that you can begin to form a tripod. Because once we form the tripod, well, now you're ready to branch.
Right.
And so you see kind of how sequentially these things play out, and you can look back at the notes and follow us from rotating leadership, clustering, developing tripods in the clusters, and then now empowering a small group branch, which is now a completely separate group
Right.
with a completely separate leadership tripod and completely separate leadership core. Why is this important? Because again, we need to be able to shepherd more and more people.
Right.
And you know, sometimes we can feel like I can shepherd. I got them all. Really?
Right.
No, you don't. And maybe you do, but either way, we need to empower new leaders to be able to do it. Could Jesus have done all the ministry himself? He absolutely could have, but he
Right.
wanted to empower the 12, and now he empowers the church, right? So I think we want to follow in those footsteps. Coach, any thoughts on this? Because you've done this now many times over your
you've
illustrious
done it.
career.
You've done it too, Billy. But we've been around for a while. You know, the problem is sometimes we used to branch too early.
Yes.
And we didn't really develop leaders.
Yep.
We didn't cluster,
Yep.
and we branch, and we realize those branches don't last.
They don't.
But when we back it up and cluster and develop two sets of leadership
Mm-hmm.
in there, there's a better chance of that branch eventually would take on and begin to grow. So I like what you're saying. Like we got to get into a mindset of developing other leaders. Give people a shot. So sometimes we do it all ourselves. Our job is not just to do it, but to get other people to lead and do. When you do that, you go from addition to multiplication. And that's what we need to do.
That's right. Yeah. And sometimes we can get stuck in one of these phases, right?
Right,
And that's why. So we've developed this now over the years, and these are just some best practices that we've learned in doing this.
Right.
And it's true. When we've seen groups branch out because of a need or sometimes job schedule changes and they just launch out.
Right.
And that's great, but it usually doesn't last if a tripod isn't
It's so
developed,
true.
right? If
Yeah.
leaders aren't developed. But if we can develop the tripods and then launch out healthy groups with full tripods, the viability
Right.
rate goes way up. And so we want to make sure that we're not just launching out stuff that doesn't survive and then the leader gets crushed in the
Right,
process.
right.
So, well, let's look at these discussion questions because you can look back at the notes and see these points when you go to your LGs. But what challenges have you faced in transitioning from one big group to clusters? Coach, any thoughts on that? What challenges?
I think one of the challenges is sometimes we as leaders, we want to do it all. So what we do, we the transition, you have to also be intentional. That's the key word, intentional. I'm doing it right now. We sit around one big table, but intentionally setting up that other person that's going to facilitate the cluster. And you got to be that way. You got to think like that.
Yeah.
Now, automatically, they want to be together.
Yeah.
So you almost got to prepare and share with them why we're doing this. We want to make room for new people.
That's right.
We want to reach out, with other people.
One of the challenges I see, in addition to that, as you said that, is a lot of times we think the pull to just want to all be together.
Right.
We're one big happy family. I get that, but just sociologically speaking, conversations aren't going to go very deep in a circle. I was at a church recently. I won't say where, but I witnessed multiple groups meeting in a location. And it wasn't our church.
Right.
Otherwise, I might have said something. But the groups are so large, like 12. I even counted like 12 people in that one, 15 people in that one, and you can see it.
Yeah.
The alpha personalities, they're doing all the talking,
That's so true.
arms waving in the
Right,
air.
right.
I mean, just super boisterous. And then you also see the introverts kind of just sitting there.
Yeah.
And I'm going, how deep is this conversation? How real are they getting right now? I mean, I'm sure the content was amazing and what the person was sharing was important, but people, you could see people hiding in themselves, right? And I've seen that. I feel like that when I'm in a group of more than 6 or 7. Like I don't really feel like talking. But you put me in 2 or 3 or 4,
Yeah.
I'll share stuff.
Yeah.
But you put me in around 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
I'll let y'all alphas talk. You know what I mean? And that's just a sociological reality. And so that's one of the reasons why clustering is so important. We got to break that mentality. I like to have a lot of people around me.
Right.
And let's be honest, sometimes as leaders, we can feel more important if I have 12 people listening to me versus just 3,
Yeah.
But is it about that, or is it about creating a space for people to experience, like we've said before, being known and loved? It's really hard to be known and loved in a circle of 10, 12, 13, 14. It's very easy in a group of 3 or 4 or even 5,
So
right?
true.
And so that's why, so it's breaking that mindset, I think, is really important. And so yeah, helping our groups to see that. And maybe you're doing that right now, no guilt, okay? But think about clustering. And the other thing is, you want to empower leaders.
Yes.
And really, it takes a big personality to lead a circle of 10, 12, 13 people.
Yeah.
This takes a lot. It stresses me out.
Yeah.
But to lead 2 or 3, that's
Yes.
easy. Anybody can do that. And so we're empowering people at all levels to lead. And I think that's super important.
Someone empowered you as a leader who
Amen.
gave you a shot.
That's right.
And you're just doing the same thing with someone else. And I don't know, when I begin to give a person a chance to lead, man, I feel like, hey, I'm not just doing it now. I'm actually empowering this guy. It feels really good,
Right.
but you're getting other people in the game.
That's right. And another reason why we can get stuck or challenges, if we haven't been rotating the leadership, sometimes we can feel like, I don't have anyone to lead a cluster.
Right.
Well, maybe it's because you've been doing everything and you don't have any leaders
I'm
because
probably
you've been doing
guilty
all the
of
work.
that.
Oh, I absolutely have been guilty. Now the group's super great. I got a cluster, but oh man, nobody here knows how to lead a group. So that's why we rotate, right? So that we prepare from day one.
Yes.
Your tripod should be able to lead a cluster if we're rotating the leadership, so that when the group grows,
Yes.
no problem. You go, we got this, no problem. So yeah, let's not get stuck. Let's get there. But then we don't want to stay stuck in the clustering phase. So how can we encourage more people in our group to step into leadership roles within a tripod? Going back, I think that's just rotating the leadership and then clustering, and then hey, you got it, right? But we don't want to stay stuck at the cluster level,
Right.
and that's where once we get tripods developed in the cluster, we got to call it a branch.
Yes.
And so we got to be intentional about developing tripods within clusters. What are some practical ways to develop future leaders within a cluster before branching? Coach, any thoughts on this? You're great at leadership
some of
development.
the times I've known that when I show up, and if you're a leader and people look to you, sometimes we're the one that's hindering it. So what I would do, I would be intentional about going later. I would actually tell the guys, start the groups and clustering, and then when I come to the group, I just stare at the person that's running the group and like really empowering them. So sometimes we just have to kind of remove ourselves a little bit, and then we come, and then we give them opportunity, because they know, they've been there, they know how to do it, but they just have to be encouraged. So sometimes just be intentionally, come a little late, let them run it, and then from there you're just going to coach and help them.
Yeah, let them know, and so that they're prepared. And again, if they've been rotating, they got it. I mean, I've just found for me, there's so many times where I just can't come. Like last night, my daughter had a play, there are going to be times where you can't be there. But if you haven't been rotating, then you got no leaders.
Right.
But if you've been rotating, they have no problem, and then you can be gone, whether intentionally or without, because you had no other option. But I think it just starts from the intentional. It's not all on you, leaders. It's not all on me.
Yes.
I have to. My job is to train up leaders,
Right.
and so I need to do that. Or one of my jobs is to do so. So being intentional from day one, and then giving them opportunities. What challenges are you experiencing going from clustering to branching? Now, sometimes we can get stuck here. Coach, any thoughts on that?
Well, sometimes we're developing people, but we're looking at them. Sometimes we want them to be like us, and they're not going to be like us. They have their own, their giftings, their talents, and so you got to be okay with that, and give people a chance. They always say, "Oh, what if they bomb or they make mistakes?" Mistakes are the way of life. We're going to make mistakes, but we learn from those things.
That's good.
And you give people a chance on that. So, I like the fact that when you're developing them in clustering and you're giving them the vision that at some point we're going to branch.
Yep.
So you got to put that in their mind, because if not, they're going to cluster forever.
That's right. The goal is not for us to be together forever. The goal is for us to grow and include more people in God's family and branch out. I love what you said about mistakes, because that's true. I think one of sometimes the reasons why we don't want to branch or even empower new leaders is we're afraid that they'll fail.
Right.
We're afraid that they'll make mistakes. I love what Steve Merle said.
Yeah.
Mistakes aren't optional.
Right.
They're required. Now, some of us, especially if you're a perfectionist Asian, you're like, what, mistakes? No. A minus, never,
right,
but
right.
but the reality is, if you're trying things and you're doing things, you're gonna make mistakes,
Yes.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
The main thing is that we're there to help coach them. There's a tripod to support them, right? There's a core so that they're not by themselves, so that the mistake isn't fatal. The
Right,
failure
right,
isn't
right.
fatal. It's a learning opportunity, right? And I think with that mentality, then we can empower, expecting there to be mistakes.
That's right.
Expecting there to be failures, but we're going to be there, and there's enough of a core there to support them when that
Right.
happens, so that we can all learn. These can
Right,
all be
right,
learning
right.
moments
Yeah.
rather than, catastrophic or whatever our fears are. Often that, I think a big thing, what challenges do we experience going from clustering to branching? It's the leader.
Yes.
Sometimes it's something stuck in our minds where, again, maybe we think that we got to do it all
We
and
gotta be
everyone
there, yeah.
needs me and we're the Messiah, right? And
Yeah.
we got to make sure we don't have that. Or we think we got to take all the weight and we're the martyr, right? Like it's
Right,
all
right.
on me and we're not empowering leaders. So either it's a Messiah complex or a martyr complex.
Right.
Both of those aren't helpful. We have to be encouraging, empowering leaders, rotating leadership, all the stuff that we said today. And then the branch should kind of come naturally.
Right, right.
Like one of my groups, I was just talking with the leader, and we're pretty close to a branch, and it's automatic because we've been doing that, and you see these new leaders emerging, and it's almost easy in a
Right,
sense.
right,
I don't
right.
think it should be so hard if we're walking these steps, which is how we develop these
Yeah,
points.
and sometimes from clustering to branching, they're afraid, and they always say, "Well, you're not going to be there." And I say, "No, I'm just one phone call away, one text away. Just go ahead and do it, and then we can always talk about it after." But I find that sometimes we have to remove ourselves.
Yeah.
If you're a strong leader,
Yes.
you have to remove yourself to let them lead.
Yep. Yep. And in our Asian culture, people often won't lead until they're forced to or
Right,
given
right,
the
right.
opportunity. Because if there's a stronger leader there, we'll all defer.
Yes,
right? I think
yes,
that's just
yes.
human nature.
Yeah.
And so the branch is necessary. And then something comes out that you didn't know was there. I mean,
Right.
I've seen things come out of guys that I never thought would come out, but you're just like, wow, this is amazing.
Right.
But if I stayed in the spot, then everyone would just defer to me, and
Right,
that
right,
robs
right.
them an opportunity to grow and robs people an opportunity because
Yes.
there's less groups to connect them. Well, amen. We can beat this to death, but I just want to go back and just reiterate the win is not just having nice groups. We
Yeah.
do want to have nice groups that are
Yes.
powerful and life-changing, but we need to have more
Right.
nice groups,
Yes, yes.
which then requires raising up leaders and all the things that we've been talking about, branching especially. So what barriers are in our minds that prevent us from taking these steps?
Right.
We need to talk about that in LG, let's discuss these things, and hopefully we come out now with a clear vision and a process, which these steps will help us with, so that we can go from just one nice group to multiple groups, to
Yes.
lots of groups, to church plants, locally, nationally, and globally. That's how the world is meant to be
Right,
one.
right, right.
And we get to be a part of that process. So leaders, thank you for all that you guys do. We're super grateful for all of you. Coaches, thank you
Yes,
for leading. Small group leaders, thank you for leading. And as we continue to learn together, grow together, I'm confident we're going to be able to make a tremendous impact locally, nationally, and globally together. So thank you. Have great discussions when you have your LGs. And let's go from transitioning from just clustering to branching.
Come on.
And let's reach more people for Jesus. Amen. Thank you guys for all you do. Have a great weekend.